Ethan and Lindon stood over the grimy pit. It's in this book where Yerin realizes why her master died, because of the suppression field. So there's that thing that she's wrestling with. It's a grim realization. Oh, this is why he died.
It just shows the development of the author and his writing ability.
Absolutely. It's cosmic. And the whole thing is cosmic, because you have the Abaddon, you have the Mad King, you have the Dread God.
Coming to you from an endless library, where every book is read and every spoiler discussed. Join us as we dig into the lives of fictional people who cannot defend themselves. This is the Side Quest Book Club. What happens when you have been given a vision that your hometown is going to be destroyed, and you decide that you're going to become strong enough to make sure that you can save it, and you think that you have 3 to 5 years, but actually you only have 18 months? Well, we look at that today on Bloodline Part 2, where Lindon has returned to Sacred Valley. So let's get into it. Welcome back, Side Questers.
Yeah. Nope, that's not what I want to say. That's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah.
We're going to do a quick overview of the plot. I'm just going to hit major points, and then we'll get into Part 2 real quick. So, the Ninecloud City, Station Daji has been captured. He gets accused of stuff. He is a coward, so he doesn't want to admit it. Lindon beats his ass. Akura Fury ascends to the Abaddon. Lindon and Yerin convince Akura Charity to allow them to help evacuate Sacred Valley. Does not welcome them, as we would expect. At Sacred Valley, it becomes clear that Yerin's ascension to Herald was imbalanced. She is disproportionately impacted by the boundary field, but she continues with the group. Other than the Kazan, who are quickly convinced to leave, the clans and schools are stubborn. When the Wandering Titan arrives, Yerin calls in a favor with Malice to have her delay it while they continue evacuating. And then Lindon and company evacuate as many as they can, but Malice teleports them back to Moongrave. However, they decide to go back to fight the Titan once more. Tross helps them drive off the Titan, but overextends himself and is reduced to a formless Dream Madra in the process. And they aren't sure if he will recover, and the very last line of the book is, I forget the character's name, but him and Lindon talk, and he asks Lindon, "Do you want to know how to kill a Dread God?" And boom. Also, bloopers. Well, I want to prime this, so help me remember. I want to talk about one blooper in particular that made these bloopers my favorite. I already mentioned last time that this book is my favorite so far. The bloopers are my favorite so far, and it's for one particular blooper. I want to just side quest on it for 30 seconds
just do it.
later.
Just do it. No.
I'll do it. All right.
Just do it.
So I'll read it, and you'll instantly know why it's my favorite blooper of the whole series thus far. Ethan and Lindon stood over the grimy pit. Looking down into the hole where Heaven's Glory building had collapsed. "If you already know what's down there, I would appreciate it if you would tell me," Lindon said. Ethan grimaced. Lots of grimy blankets, some destroyed tools, and a shallow sewer of human waste. He knelt and brushed a hand over the indentation in the rubble. A halfling lay here. He moved to another dent next to the first, and another. "What's a halfling?" Lindon asked. "Hush. I'm dodging the copyright." Ethan closed his eyes, tracing the trail. They crawled. Their hands were bound. "I'm certain he made this up." "Their bonds were cut." Lindon decided to ignore him.
Oh, a throwback to Lord of the Rings. Blessed.
Yeah, it's masterfully done. Will Wight, chef's kiss, cookie, a medal, whatever, all the right words. This was so good. It made me smile.
He does this with different IPs. He did this with Dragon Ball Z as well at some point.
Yes.
He's
Like,
no. No, we can't do that. That's not part of this IP. Not allowed.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. That's great. This is so good.
Yeah. That's something I'm surprised nobody else has ever done is bloopers, honestly.
You've said this every book, and I agree with you every time. Every time. It's amazing. It's a good shtick. I love the bit.
The thing is, you can't do it with every book. You couldn't do it with Stormlight. You couldn't do it with It. You couldn't do it with it's got to be a book that doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it ruins the book for folks. But this is like fun action adventure, fast paced, and so it works.
Exactly. If it ended with Pennywise and the group of losers stand over a grimy pit looking down in the hole, okay.
Yeah, not so much.
Not so much, though. Yeah.
So, Sacred Valley, we've learned that the suppression field is bringing them back from their currently achieved power levels to all the way back down to Jade. Although it's like Jade Plus because they, as we've read in the book, they have this, like, they still get to be golds, basically.
Right.
But, and this is something that I mentioned last time, like, the power levels are worlds apart.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's like fighting someone who's a Jade when you're so crazy high level is just, it's astronomical. But the same thing applies, like, as these power levels progress. There's a game that I used to play called Lineage, the Blood Pledge. It was like 1997. It was an MMORPG based out of Korea. Shout out if you guys played it. It was very hard. It was all grind. There's 4 quests, one at level 15, one at level 30, one at level 45, and one at 52. That's it. Everything else was hard grind. And level 1, let's just say it was like 10 experience points. Level 2 was level 1's experience plus the new level. So like 50 experience points, where it was 40 for level 2, 10 for level 1. Level 3 was 100 plus the previous sets. So like every level became all of the previous levels requirements plus the new level. And so getting to 52 was really difficult, but this is how I see this grind that like they've gone through, where it's like they ground and ground and ground and they got to the top, but then they get declined back down to this Jade level. And it's like having done all this work and then you don't even get to enjoy the fruits of your labor while you're on this specific quest or mission.
Yeah. I've never played that game.
It's a very specific game that a lot of people have not played. It's a 2D. Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if none of our audience has played it, honestly.
Yeah.
It was rare.
Yeah. It's weird. When I was a kid, I liked games like that as little as I got to play them. But I like games like that. What I spent my time playing more than anything was like the computer games, because we had a computer lab at school to make sure us kids didn't get in trouble or do drugs. So that's where I got into gaming, and it was all the old computer games. Yeah, one of our schools, I think this was in 9th grade now, we had Doom. They allowed us to play Doom because it was a pretty progressive school, so there was like, nah, it's going to cause kids to go hurt others. Nobody thought that way. They're just like, it's a game, and kids get to shoot demons. Fine.
It's fine.
So that was my foray into gaming. But tabletops, I enjoyed them. I played them a few times in my life, but sadly never had like a posse that I could play with continuously or regularly. So,
yeah, I feel that. I had a lot of single player time, even through high school, where people had other things to do, but that was like what I was making my thing.
Yeah.
And so I spent hours. I mean, Lineage the Blood Pledge, I easily spent 40 hours a week doing. And then when I joined a different MMORPG, Rift, there was clans, and we were a progression guild, and I was like one of the leaders of my class, and I spent 80 hours a week playing that. Like, but you have time, right?
Yeah.
You have time, and it's fun. And there's like a community aspect and like a unified goal aspect, but you don't have that luxury in today's fast-paced, responsibility-ridden society. Because if I had time and I had $1 billion, I would probably play a few more video games because I had time. But I don't have time.
Yeah. What'd you say a couple episodes ago? That we have lives, wives, and dogs? And plus responsibilities?
Yeah.
There they are. Preventing us from playing games.
My dog is borrowed. It's my mother-in-law's dog / my wife's dog. But
Does he live with you? She?
no, but she comes over pretty regularly because my mother-in-law works, and so dog needs to get let out. But she's like a Yorkie poo, so
Oh, okay.
she's small. She's a small dog. Your dogs would eat my dog.
Well, only one of them. The boy is very calm and stoic. The psychopath who happens to be running our legal department is a little
Running
less
our legal
stoic.
Department. I like it.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the suppression
Yeah.
field.
So the nature of the field is a security measure for some reason. This place needs it, right?
It's a security measure. It's also what was used, and I don't know if Malice created this or if it existed before her. I can't remember, or if we even learn it. It was created to help them fight the dread gods. Like, hey, if we can lure them into this place, but then you've got the people who live there who are just forever stunted, right?
Yeah. And people who enter it afterwards, who weren't born there, are also stunted.
Yep.
And Yerin gets affected because of her merging with the blood soul thing. Blood
The
spirit.
Blood Phoenix.
Blood Phoenix, thank you.
Because the Blood Phoenix is a dread god. But because Yerin doesn't have all the power that the Blood Phoenix does, she gets all of the negative effects, but none of the positive ones. Well, there is no positive, so
Yeah.
just the negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's like a half-formed being, basically.
Yeah, and then the Monarchs have to intervene to help her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So is it just for the Monarchs to morally just to have a suppression field that people still live in, stunted and like removed from society, living in it's like the Ozarks or something?
Well, that's a interesting question. It's a good question. The answer is very murky and gray. Like, absolutely? Like, no. If we're talking in absolutes, objectively speaking, no. They should probably care for the people and focus on the Dread God. The suppression field should somehow focus on Dread God essence or something. But in this world, Might is right, and we'll talk about this in the next episode of The Guys, the great man theory, where you do what you got to do. It's utilitarian. You have to stop the Dread Gods. So what if some backwood Ozark-like folks suffer because of it? They're not dead. They're just suppressed.
Well,
And it's the best for the world. Well, some of them are dead because of other things, adjacent to Dread Gods and their own
Dread God
stupidity.
adjacent. I like that. Don't blame it on the Dread Gods. It's just Dread God adjacent.
Yeah. Well, Dread God by himself or herself is responsible for their actions in some way. In a lot of ways, I suppose. But to answer your question more directly, it's not moral, not from our Western perspective, because they are hurting people. And if they're these monarchs and they have access to this power and knowledge, I'm sure there's a way just to attack the Dread God or create some sort of field that keeps the Dread God away and lets the people live. But again, we're not living in 2025 Western America or Europe. We're living in Cradle.
If there is a way to fight just the Dread God.
Maybe there's not.
I think that there's a cost to it. However, my question really, and maybe I didn't articulate this well, is it just for monarchs to allow people to live in the backwoods still in clearly a negative environment, an oppressive environment that they built, so those people will forever be stunted and never have the opportunity. They just won't have the opportunities because they're living in, to call it Chornobyl, right? Sacred Valley is the Chernobyl of Cradle in the Black Flame Empire. And like Malice has the resources to remove the people or invite them to leave and then like give them the choice, but she doesn't.
Yeah.
And like, so is it morally just on her part to like, well, they don't want to leave. I haven't even asked them, but whatever. Or is it her responsibility as leader to have at least made an offer? They said no, given them the opportunity because it was meant to be for the Dread Gods as opposed to the humans.
I think it's morally right as a leader for her to give them the opportunity. And to my point, work out a way. And if it's not possible to focus this on only the Dread Gods, then you come to the people and you say, hey, here's the thing. You can stay here, but you'll be stunted too. Your growth will be stunted. You can't ascend more than Jade. If that's your life and you're beholden to your way of life, to your traditions, to this world, to this place in the world, God bless you. Those who are not, come with me. End of story.
God bless us, everyone, but only Malice.
Yes.
Right?
What was my line? Yeah. What was my line? Let us all live or something?
Let us live.
Let us live. Yeah. There it is. If you know, you know.
Yes, if you haven't checked out
Christmas Carol.
You should. Let us live. As Timey Tim says, let us live.
It's Timey 10.
Timey 10. Tim Dibdy. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this gets into if you go meta more on this and like philosophically speaking, world perspective belief. What is it called? What do you say?
Worldview.
Worldview. Yeah. Did you give me some vodka this morning?
Maybe.
Probably.
So, worldview, to recap, is your epistemology, your metaphysics, and your ethics. So, metaphysics is your view of reality, what we know is real. Epistemology, knowledge. How do we know what we know? How do we know more? Can we truly know what we know? And then ethics, born out of those two, is how you act.
Mm-hmm. And so the idea of like, well, is it utilitarian where they need something to deal with these very powerful creatures?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it, optimism, which I don't remember the actual philosophical phrasing for that at the moment. But
deontology?
Maybe, because I thought that deontology was changing it from the inside out. I want to say optimism. Whatever the philosophy of optimism is, where it's like doing the best that you can that for all people. Man, I am drawing a blank on these words this morning.
Deontology is an ethical theory that judges actions based on adherence to rules, duties, or obligations rather than the consequences of the action. So, and then you said optimism?
That would fall more into the utilitarian view, I think, if I was to give it a spectrum and lean. Yeah, but it's not optimism. There's like deontology. I've talked about this with Chris, who's going to be on Crime and Punishment with us. Deontology versus something else, but the like, hey, we have to help everyone. It's not utilitarian. It's it's on the tip of my tongue. Something. Say the words, Slava. Say the words.
I don't know what you're talking about, dude.
Can you guys leave it in the comments for me? Can you correct me? Can you tell me what word I'm trying to say here? Oh my god, this is gonna bother me.
Altruism?
Altruism! Hey, that's the show. Thanks for joining us.
Join us next week where we'll learn more words.
Where it's like adult Sesame Street.
This episode was brought to you by the letter A.
For altruism.
For altruism. Yes.
Yes, that's the word that I was trying to say. Altruism. So, altruism is kind of how society runs today, where it's like, well, we should help everyone. And it's like, yeah, that's a great thought, but it's more idealistic than it is practical. And like, where's the line between practical versus idealistic? Who draws that line and based on what? That should always be the question.
And here enters worldview. Your worldview will determine your ethics, and your altruism, or lack thereof.
Whether you draw the line or somebody else draws the line, does Congress get to draw the line? Does Western society get to draw the line? And then China is absolutely wrong. China gets to draw the line, and America's the wrong
Great
people.
White Devil.
The Great White Devil, right? No, Russia gets to draw the line. Who gets to draw the line and why? And this is like, I think, very apt for the story itself, because it's like, well, you've got these monarchs and it's people in power, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, are they objectively moral in their decisions?
Yeah.
Yes or no? If yes, why? If no, why? I've taken us down a steep rabbit hole. Bring me back to the suppression field, Slava. Don't let me out. Put me back in the cage.
The monarchs do intervene for their own, like in that with Yerin. That's evident, right?
Within a set of boundaries, right? Like, technically, Malice owns Sacred Valley. She doesn't intervene there.
No.
Until she has to.
Right.
And Mercy
until
makes
it's
a comment
best for
about
her.
This. Right. Mercy's like, Yerin's like, well, I brought a dread god, and Mercer's like, well, don't get too happy about that because she only does stuff that's good for the family.
It gets muddy, man. Like it gets.
I'm not saying it's clear cut.
Yeah. No, and I'm not saying. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, that's just me making a statement. I'm not saying you are.
Why are you coming at me?
Somebody at him in the comments, please. So, like Lindon and Yerin, their decision to come back to the Valley is altruistic, because for Lindon, it's his people. For Yerin, it's because it's her boyfriend's people, right? Her love interest people now. She has, like I called it, I think, she has more than just a sisterly affection for him. So that's that. Zeal,
he got coaxed into it. He got coaxed into it by Athan, because Athan's like, my, wouldn't it be great if someone could heal Madra lines?
Yeah. So Zeal kind of gets pulled into altruistic.
I'm talking about you.
Yeah. And then Dross is the ultimate altruistic character here. He sacrifices himself. I don't think he knew he was going to sacrifice himself. But he says,
altruism?
Don't.
Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
He says, please don't leave me. Don't abandon me. And then he does this thing. It's not clear from the book that he knows something bad might happen to him. He's pretty optimistic, right? And a happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
Dross.
Yeah, and he goes and does this thing and destroys himself, partly, right?
Dark Dross. Surreal.
There's a sense of duty, so that could be deontology. Utilitarianism comes back to the Monarchs, and specifically
Malice.
Malice, thank you.
Yeah. Because
she has to have this thing over the valley because of drag gods.
Well, and she speaks to Yerin when Yerin goes to visit her.
Yep.
In a utilitarian, like, well, we lost some cities because I was distracted by the last dread god, blah 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 blah. And it's like, and then she's also being utilitarian and like taking out the dragons, and Yerin's like, ooh, that doesn't make me feel good. And Malice is like, do you need to know what they did? Here's what they did. And she describes this horrible thing. And then Yerin's like, okay, well, just do that same thing to them then, I guess.
Yeah. And the muddy part comes in where even though Lindon is altruistic and going to save his people, he ultimately uses utilitarian tactics to get them out. And so does Mercy.
You have to. In this specific group of people.
Specific world, specific group of people. Goes back to some of our text.
And he tried to do it differently.
He did.
A little too much, honestly.
Well, could be argued either way. I like the tension, and I like how it was drawn out. I mentioned that last time. I like that it took a little longer. I'm seeing myself being less and less annoyed with Lindon. And so
I told you he was going to confront himself. He was going to get that mirror moment.
Yeah, so I like that he showed more restraint that he needed. For the book. For the book, it works well. And again, to go back to our pseudo-argument or whatever it was, about him, low-key
stooping down to literally someone else's level.
Sure, whatever. But low-keying like the Hulk did to Loki, say that 5 times fast, to Dodgy. It was great. But then when the world and rules and his own worldview allows for it, allows maybe not the most appropriate word, but he does show restraint. He doesn't just start banging people against walls in the ground and going, all right, you're coming with me. Knock you out, kill you, and we're going. But then he does use his force, his will, authority, how the book writes it. So that's the greatness of it, because he's altruistic, but ultimately uses utilitarian tactics to get what he needs done because of his altruism.
Yeah. And what do you guys think? Did Lindon act appropriately? Did he act justly? Was him using utilitarian tactics when he is coming from an altruistic perspective the way to do things? Should he stayed in his altruism? What do you guys think in the comments? Or do you think that Malice should have just burned the whole place to the ground and Lindon died before book 1?
This just came to me. That Cradle by itself, I think, is a altruistic world. It runs on altruistic principles, right? And Lindon...
Do you mean altruistic?
No, utilitarian.
I was like, wait a second.
Utilitarian.
No, you can't mean that.
No,
okay.
I didn't mean that. But Lindon is an altruistic guy within this utilitarian world.
Yep.
And he's forced to use the
happened.
rules of the world, adhere to the rules of the world, all the things of the world, to survive, even to advance. He stabs some guy in the back. He beats Dodgy, half to death. He does all these things, and then in, what was it, Ghostwater, where he comes out swinging in the prologue and kills a bunch of dudes? So even Lindon is a nice guy. Maybe it wasn't Ghostwater. But there's one book where it just starts out and he kills a guy, or he starts kicking somebody's ass. I forget. Anyway, he maybe not kill, but he starts kicking ass. So even Lindon, as good guy Lindon, altruistic sage that he is, he resorts to some, ass kickery. I'm going to make up a term. Utilitarianism to get stuff done. So take that for what you will.
Nice guy Lindon, Void Sage, altruistic boy wonder.
Yeah, but listen, like, you take people in war, in a real war, or a real conflict. Mm-hmm. There's nice people, altruistic people, peaceful people, but when war comes to their door, they are more scary than the guy that's torturing people, skinning people, going completely bonkers, psychopath. That guy is scary himself because he's a force that is, it's difficult to mitigate. But when met with a guy who is forced to defend his family, himself, or, ascend, grow, in order to be able to protect his clan, that guy's a lot more scarier. And he might say this one in apologies every 5 minutes like a little twerp. But pushed to the limit, that guy is a little scarier. In the good way.
He learns that he is not being listened to, and so he's going to go,
yeah,
okay, then I'm going to make you listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Politely.
Yep.
Within his polite reason, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. So I liked it. I liked it a lot. Like the whole scene. I know I've said this already 100 times, but this was a very, very good read for me. I enjoyed this book immensely.
What did you not like? We haven't talked about that in a minute.
I don't know. I have to think about it because I was so engrossed in the story.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the things I already hashed out numerous times. I can't say that there was something that stood out to me as, oh gosh, I don't.
Well, let me clarify this question a little bit more. You can not like, so like I didn't like how long it took Lindon to like man up, basically. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad story, right? Like not in the type of like, what did you not like with my response to China Mayville and City in the City?
Okay.
It doesn't have to be I hated this book, right? It's just like I didn't love this part, or I didn't love how long this took, or I didn't love like the nuance part of it, right? Like because, and I think we talked about this a little bit with kata bases, where it's like concept, loved the concept, execution, whatever.
Yep.
And so it's like, well, what did you not like? It could be a single scene. It can be a character. It made me, or even put a different way. Yeah. What made you uncomfortable, or what made you take pause? Where you're like, well, I don't know about that.
The only thing that's coming to mind is Yerin's altruism. How quickly she got there, and I kind of understand now that she likes Lindon and blah blah blah. They're a couple or something. But I wished that we would see Yerin lose her shit a little bit more, and then Yerin's like, hey, remember what we're here for. Please don't kill all my people.
Yeah. You mean Lindon, but I got you. You said Yerin twice. Yep.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Not enough coffee or too much vodka. Yeah, I wish Yerin would lose her shit. And I thought she lost her shit appropriately as Will intended the story to unfold. Because she still kicks some ass, but goes, all right, because of Lindon and because these guys are weak, I won't do anything. But I wish she would, like, obliterate a dozen of them and then go, oh, wait, maybe, this a little much.
Did I do that?
Sorry, Lindon.
Steve Urkel for you.
Or Lindon, in the midst of her about to destroy a dozen of them, goes, hey, buddy, girlfriend, pal, boo, please don't do that. We're here for another reason. And it doesn't have to be a conflict where it separates them or they're at odds with each other, but I wish I would see Yerin go a little crazy and then
At least
have to
wrestle with it somehow.
Yeah. But again, I'm only saying that because you forced me to think about it, and as I'm trying to remember,
That's right. Gaslight me. Gaslight me.
try to remember. That's what I'm here for.
This.
You did. As I'm trying to think through the book, upon you prompting the question, I was like, oh yeah, when I was reading it, I did go, it's kind of weird, out of character that Yerin just kind of goes along with the whole let's not kill people, weaker than us.
On that point, I would have liked to have seen attention for specifically like her master. We get a little bit of it, right? We get a little bit where it's like these people, and she makes snide remarks or whatever, but it would have been interesting if like, well, she didn't have the power level to do this, so I guess what I'm going to say doesn't make sense. But when she was dealing with Heaven's Glory School, she would have had like her sword art like constantly at their neck, just waiting for them to do something, and then like just do a slight line and they start bleeding, right? Like something to go like, I'm not tolerating this. Or to your point, or maybe I'm actually just agreeing with you, like the tension of, hey, she is still not okay with them, but she's trying to be respectful of Lindon and what he's trying to do. So
it's in this book, and I mentioned this last episode, it's in this book where Yerin realizes why her master died. Because of the suppression field. So there's that thing that she's wrestling with. It's a grim realization. Oh, this is why he died. So maybe that helped her restrain some of her anger.
Yeah, maybe.
But
maybe. It's possible. I also think, and I'm realizing this now, that Will did something really subtle. Yerin is actually a lot more powerful than Lindon at the moment, just because she became a herald archlord? Overlord? Archlord?
Overlady or whatever?
Overlady?
Yeah.
Wait. Underlord? Overlady. Yeah, something like that, where she like jumped power levels. And he handicaps her through in-world use. But we didn't notice it because we're like, oh, that just makes sense. Yeah, she's part Dread God now, and she's in this field, and this field is built for Dread Gods. Like, oh, okay. And to us, it feels like the puzzle piece is there. But then she has to go on a side quest herself to, like, get restored, although she doesn't understand that at the time. But he removes her from the fight completely.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Like, doing it in a way that feels organic, right?
And it wasn't organic. Like, this is so far my favorite book. Mm-hmm. Now that the others are not organic enough for me, but it seemed that this one was more tight. It just
shows the development, right, of the author and his writing ability, you know?
No arguments here, absolutely. So, I want to jump to the last scene, and you tell me if this is too soon in our episode. But Lindon is talking to Elder Whisper, and they discover, or Lindon discovers, this mummified hand that belongs to the father of the Dread Gods. And then Elder Whisper goes, do you want to know how to kill a Dread God, Lindon? And boom, book ends. Tune in next week to find out how to kill a Dread God, I guess. So, is that enough time in your mind, or enough information that we spend with, or would you want more? I am putting on my Jonathan hat, and I felt like the whole hand thing and the fact that Subject 1, or whatever it is, was the father of the Dread Gods, that could have been teased out a little more in order to have it even a greater cliffhanger. Are you enjoying today's side quest? Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. We are available on YouTube and all major platforms, so you can listen to us anywhere. And now, back to the show.
It absolutely could have been teased out more. And I'd say that this is one of Will's weak points, is he moves so fast that sometimes he doesn't go through the layering that someone like a Sanderson does, or other authors.
Sure, yeah.
He's just like, oh, also, here's this thing. Okay, until next time. Right?
Yeah, that's how it felt to me. So maybe this is the one I truly didn't like to
Sure.
answer your question. But yeah, I felt Lindon finding Whisper, finding the Aurelius vault or whatever. There's this hand.
The labyrinth.
The labyrinth is it's described, briefly, and then they talk, Elder and Elder Whisper and Lindon, and then, hey Lindon, do you want to know how to kill a drag god? And that's great. Leave it on that line. Freaking A. Good ending. But father of the drag gods, what does that mean? Lindon could have asked, well, what do you mean father? How did they sire the drag gods? Blah, 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 or whatever.
Right, and we'll unpack that as the final 3 books conclude.
Mm-hmm.
The Dread Gods are the big bad evil guy for the series, and the Monarchs too a little bit. And we'll get some conclusions as we move forward. But I do think that there could have been, I guess, nuanced build-up throughout the series.
Yeah, a little bit more build-up. That's a really good word for it. I like that.
But
more build-up.
I'm not sure that Will actually was... So if I was reading his blog, because I started this series, I think when he was on... I think he'd released Winter Steel, and he was like, hey, I think I'm going to make this a 12-book series because I just want it to end. And he was like talking about this idea of like, I'm kind of over... He didn't say this explicitly, but I'm over the story. I want to write something else. Which is fair. I mean, he's the author. He gets to do what he wants. However, and you've heard me say this before, specifically with this IP, is like, if the people want it, then you should sell it to them.
Yeah.
That's capitalism. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't also do something else, but everyone writes at their own pace. Not everyone's drafting the way that Sanderson does, or like doing as thorough processes like Rothfuss. And so he releases less books. It's like you create at your own cadence based on the level of depth or professionalism or whatever you want to call it, attention to detail that you want to. And I can't remember a time where I heard him talk about, oh, well, I planned out 12 books and I knew that this is how I wanted it to end. I think it was just kind of writing as he went. Long answer long. Which is okay. Yeah. We've all enjoyed it. But I think that you have more opportunity for layering. You have more opportunity for layering if you know where it's going to end, even though you're going to change it. So like before you put pen to book 1, if you know where it's going to end in book 12, you can create the river of the story, the loom of the story, and determine, oh, we're going to hit a roadblock here, we're going to kill a character there, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then in your revising, you're like, oh, I actually want to drop a little, just a very subtle nothing here that will flourish in book 12.
Yeah, Nick mentioned this in some way in our interview with him, where he's like, he's building this world, he has everything planned out for all 7 books, or at least the key moments, and then other stuff.
Moments. That's the way I took it.
Yeah, other stuff, as you go with your characters, you write what you think they would react to, you bring in incidents or events that you never thought about, but because you're pounding this out and you have this goal in book 4, 5, 6, 7, you're like, oh, this would work best to get the character to that event, to that position, to that whatever.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then Jonathan ruins everything by coming with a very different perspective. Not that I do this with every book, and not that I'm saying that I'm the best at this.
Yeah.
Because I've just spent time on Reddit and people are like, well, why don't blah, blah, blah. And to give you an example of like what I'm talking about in this exact moment is, it's like when people say, well, why didn't the Fellowship take the Eagles to Mordor? It's like that, where you're like, you try and break the story, right? Which should happen during the beta reads, hopefully.
But that's what we do as millennials, and I'm an elder millennial, as this can testify to. But that's what millennials do. We love breaking stories. Yeah, like all the content I consume about books, movies, theories, games, especially games, I see a lot of younger millennial, middle millennial, whatever that means, and even some of the older Gen Zs, they like theories on video games and stories on lore. And at least the people I consume their content, it's all about breaking the story, breaking the narrative with fun theories and hot takes and all that. I love it. So,
well, I don't know. I guess I would put hot takes and theories in a different realm.
Sure, but they do both.
That makes me question, like, what is the essence of breaking a story? Because that to me is what I'm doing, where I'm like, well, it's like when someone, I think JT brought this up in one of the previous things, where it's like this type of writing with Wuxia and Zanzia. It's like, well, in book 3, you had this big powerful item that just like gets forgotten on purpose, but like then you mention a new big item, and so like you purposely just kind of let this stuff fade, and so then it's, to me, breaking the story is like, well, in book 3 the big power item was this, and because of how it works it really should affect blah blah blah, and so you like use in-world mechanics to then break said story. That's what I'm thinking about when I say break a story.
Okay, it's a little different than what I'm talking about.
Okay,
that happens in what I'm talking about, but it doesn't happen as purposefully as with you, and that's not a dig.
Sure.
Yeah. They're just talking about, okay, character X is doing A, B, C, or D, but
Right.
what if there was a fourth choice, or using in-world rules and in-world lore and all the information that they have thus far to the story, they have a theory that says, well, this means
Yes.
that Link is always been the villain of the story, of the game. And then it's just an example. And then they go into reasons why Link is actually the villain, or why Mario is not as altruistic in saving the princess as we all
How many
think.
turtles does he kill, and
All that kind of stuff, yeah.
Goombas, and
Yes. Like, what about the Goomba's family who now doesn't have a father because Mario killed, half the village?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So it breaks the story, but it's really just for fun to explore
I
like
would
these
call
darker
that
sides.
story extrapolation, where you play out the scenario of like, hey, you just killed your 3000th Goomba, and like, what
Yes.
about the Goomba's cousins? That to me is extrapolating the story narrative to a breaking point, which is where I think the line is here. It's like you're taking the story and going, well, because you killed 3000 Goombas, X, Y, and Z, therefore Mario's actually a bad person. Versus like, hey, the story of Mario is rescuing the princess from Bowser, and like, why doesn't he just use the cape from Super Mario 3 to like swoop in, grab her, and not have to fight him at all?
I think in my mind the distinction there is not as large as in your mind. But yeah, I'm willing to admit that there's a distinction. I'm just saying it gets muddy, at least for the content I consume. They
Sure.
do all of that in one episode sometimes.
Yeah, it's muddy's a great way to say it. So let's ask the audience, like, do you guys do this? Are you a millennial of some kind, elder, mid, or young millennial,
Yeah.
or older Gen Zer? Like, do you do this? Do you think there's a line? Right? Like, some of these questions, like, tell us, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to know. And if you know of any content creators that you consume on this, drop them in the comments. I will watch them.
Tell them they should be on the show. Tag them in the comments to be
Heck
on the
yeah.
show. Let's get to the bottom of this.
Because that could be a side quest in itself, where we talk about a world, talk about a story, and break it.
Mm-hmm.
Provide theories. Because we kind of go
What do they call
through
it?
the...
Deconstructing?
Yes, let's deconstruct some stories.
Let's deconstruct Super Mario together.
Yeah. We go through these books and we explore what we like, what we don't like, but mainly we talk about the plot points and try to extrapolate some real-world examples and go on philosophical little
characters.
side quests.
Yep.
But if we were to sit down and totally break a story and say, what if Quoth was the true villain? Something silly like that. Or why... Kaladin is X or whatever. Shallan
Why
is really...
the Chandrian are justified in their actions towards Kvothe and his family.
Yes, exactly. Crap like that. I love crap like that.
That should be a segment that we do at the end of some of these things, where we
We could.
put them into a bowl and we pull them out. It's like, okay, you have 3 minutes to justify why the Chandrian actually deserve to be the heroes of this story.
Yep.
So
love it.
drop some of the silly stuff that we should have to argue over in the comments.
Yeah, definitely. Give us ideas to fight. Jonathan and I love debating, and even when we get spicy with each other, it's out of brotherly love. It's just, I like debating if it's done well, and if I know that the person has my best interest in mind, no matter how we are opposed in real life or in this context where we're just two guys talking about books. I love a good debate as long as it's, as long as it's interesting. I get bored easily sometimes.
Are you
not
gonna tell the
sometimes.
people about how you slashed all 4 of my tires that one time?
No, I'm never going to tell anybody that.
Cool. Great. I'm still waiting for him to pay me back on my 4 tires, but It's cool. It's fine.
But I love debates as long as they're not boring. And what I mean by that is there are some people are so inarticulate and uninteresting in their positions that I'm like, I don't know how to respond to you. Like, you said something, I know there is a logical response. Whether I'm right or wrong is irrelevant. I know I have a response. It's in my head. But to put the sentence together and to use my tongue to say it, I'm like, I'm just too bored. Like, this is, I'm done with you. Mm-hmm. So when it's whether we're arguing silly crap about Dodgy getting beat half to death, or we're talking about something serious.
Which you're wrong about. Anyway.
Whatever. See, I don't even want to respond to that.
Are you above it?
I am above it.
You're above stooping to my level?
Yes. Yes.
And
because,
point proven.
Because this is not Cradle. If this was Cradle and I needed to come over there and twist your ear or kick you down some stairs, I would do it.
I wish you would. I wish you would. So next up, we got Dread Gods as a catalyst. We talked about briefly last episode, and then also like Yerin's vulnerability, which we touched on a little bit. So like, pick your own adventure, pick your own side quest. P.Y.O.S.Q. P.O.S.Q.
Well, I have notes in my trusty little journal here, so I didn't have time to put them into our Google Doc. I said that last time. I still couldn't find time to put them in our Google Doc. But the Dread God is a catalyst. Like, I want to talk about that. I find that interesting. So we have this Wandering Titan, and it's for me, it serves as the catalyst in world for the plot, for the unity, for difficulty. It presents a difficulty, right? It drives the characters to some desperate actions. It forces them to confront themselves and confront their past, their families. For Lindon in some ways, for Yerin with her master, for Mercy with her mother. And it forces them to confront these difficulties, their values, for heroism, acts of heroism, their morality, or even mortality. Not even, but also mortality. And they are at the same level. They're all kind of, have different power levels, but now they're in Sacred Valley. And because they're somewhat unified in their powers, or, equals in their powers to some degree, now they're forced to confront this big, bad, demon, world-eating thing. And that, I think, is one of my favorite parts of the book. That maybe that's why I love it so much. Besides the tight writing and all the things I mentioned first episode, there's this thing, which is what good books are made of, that forces the characters to do something. We get a revelation of what they need, what they want, all the stuff you always harp on, which is, I'm in agreement with you about it. And here we have the big bad thing, and it's literally a big bad thing. And it forces them to not only do internal, like, rehashings, they get revelations because of it, and it molds them as a better team, I think. So I love that, because the Dread God is not just a guy that's a little bit more powerful that they have to fight in an arena.
Yeah, it's astronomically powerful.
Absolutely. It's cosmic. And the whole thing is cosmic, because you have the Abaddon, you have the Mad King, you have the Dread God. So now the conflict is more cosmic, because you have what's in front of your face, you have the people that are above you, you have the people that are above them, and then you have this guy with a scythe. So there's a lot of stuff happening all at once, which I thought was fascinating. It was wonderfully done.
So I actually have trouble picturing how big a Dread God is. So it talks about eating mountains. And so, like, okay, you've got Mount
how many
Fuji.
bites? I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Like, to help you picture it, I'm not busting your balls. Like, how many bites does it take him to eat a mountain?
To the center of a mountain?
Yeah. Where's our owl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Yeah, so if it takes him one bite, then I can't even picture him. If it takes him 30 bites, I can kind of picture him.
I think it is multiple bites, and so, like, it has to be the size of a mountain, generally speaking. But also, I think it's larger. I think it's like Attack on Titan large.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like Attack on Titan on a little bit of steroids, and he probably didn't miss leg day because he's going for it.
Yeah, and also, like, the Wandering Titan's a turtle, right?
I missed that. If that's the case, I did a bad
Because it talked about a shell.
Is it like a carapace shell or like a shell, like a turtle shell?
I don't know.
Huh.
Use your magic research powers while I talk about the Dread Gods to figure
Let's
it
do
out.
it.
So I love that Dread Gods is like this big bad thing. You're going to be pleasantly surprised with their relation to other powerful beings in the, what'd you say, cosmic?
The cosmos,
realm?
yeah, the cradles.
Cosmos,
yeah.
Cradle Cosmos, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the Monarchs or the Abaddon or whatever, like, the Dread Gods have some sort of relation, which is that story that is like ends at this. It's the story starts at the end of this book, right? In terms of like, we're gonna learn more about it, where Elder Whisper is saying, "Hey, do you want to learn how to kill a Dread God?" And then the question is like, "Oh yeah, but we already have the juxtaposition from when Yerin went to go see the Monarchs to say, hey, actually, we can't give you a gift that would let one of us die." So the Dread Gods are more powerful than a Monarch in and of itself, and the Monarchs together, it sounds like, can't kill a Dread God either. So, like, whether it's, a kryptonite that they're missing, or whether it's just, like, even combined they can't kill this thing, like, whatever the metric is, it is impossible for Monarchs to kill a Dread God from our current understanding. That being said, it's like, okay, well, how do you have such a powerful being that, it hasn't talked about this in book, but in my mind, it's like, well, every 80 years, the Dread God wakes up and he rampages and then he goes to sleep, right? Like, whatever that thing is. And we've gotten snippets of, like, the Dread Gods are looking for something. All of them. And now we're in the labyrinth and there's, like, Subject 1. And it's like, okay, maybe they're looking for Subject 1? Question mark?
Yep.
And even if they were, Subject 1 is in a labyrinth that a human can fit into. So, like, how does that make sense? Do they shrink? I don't know. I do know, but,
Well, here's some stuff I found. So the Wandering Titan is depicted as a colossal physical force that blends humanoid and beast-like traits. The scale is truly massive. So during the final battle, Orthos grows until he's a size of a tall building. Yet even at that size, the turtle is only half the height of the Titan. It possesses a mix of limbs that allows it to fight like a brawler, but also strike like a beast. It has fists, which it uses to punch, a foot massive enough to crush Yerin flat. However, it also possesses a powerful tail to swipe enemies. It has a mouth capable of shooting streams of earth madra, eating mountains, and a neck broad enough for Lindon to land on. So its approach to the atmosphere around it, the environment around it, its approach signals a change in environment. When it arrives, the sky over a sacred valley turns gold. So it probably has Madra and aura coming off of it, and it's this big thing that's a mixture of beast and man. So maybe the shell is a carapace that you were referring to, because I don't...
It didn't mention a shell on there?
No, not in what I pulled up.
Okay, maybe I'm
And I pulled up some... Maybe. I pulled up some fan art, which we'll put on the screen. It's from Reddit. We'll notate the artist, but I found some... Oh, well, it's Midjourney. So it's a guy on subreddit iteration 110 Cradle, and I guess they fed in some description, and there's a Dread God. We'll put that on screen, and then there is another one that looks like a dragon, and that's it. That's it.
There's multiple Dread Gods. There's the Silent King, there is the Wandering Titan, there is the Bleeding Phoenix, and there is... What's the one that killed Zeal's sect? The lightning bird thing? It's like Quetzalcoatl, basically.
Yeah. Well, I found another fan art, and this is by OBSID13, also subreddit iteration 110 Cradle, and they have what looks like King Kong with a carapace that looks like a turtle shell on the back. and they have it connected to the Statue of Liberty, and he is taller than the Statue of Liberty. So we'll put that on the screen too.
Yeah.
We'll put that on the screen too. So these two artists, one used AI, one used, I guess, his hands. Both good. I'm not making a claim about anything. So we'll put both of the fan fiction up on screen. So you guys decide which one is closer to the real one.
Let us know in the comments.
So vulnerability. You want to talk about Yerin's vulnerability.
Speaking of dread gods.
Speaking of drag gods. Nice segue. So let's talk about our girl, Yerin.
Yerin has integrated and become one with her blood shadow, which her blood shadow is made up from the blood madra of the Bleeding Phoenix. And so she is one, if you will, of the Bleeding Phoenix, which is why the Sage of Red Faith is so excited that she achieved this, because this is something that he wanted to do, but his blood shadow became too powerful, basically, and separated from him. And so it would be interesting to me to get the contrast of the Sage of Red Faith in the suppression field, or his counterpart, his blood shadow, which Sage of Red Faith and maybe it's the Herald.
I'll put it on screen.
We didn't realize that Yerin, in making this decision, had the width and breadth of drawbacks that it did.
Yeah.
When she did it to win Uncrowned tournament.
Unforeseen consequences.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
But that's like with anything in life. And I know this is going to sound trivial, but let's say you make enough money to buy a luxury car, and then you realize the upkeep on it is a lot more than if you just bought a fancy Honda or a higher-end Honda if you wanted something fancy. I guess analogies always break down, but the unforeseen consequences of that, and if you have enough money, that consequences is trivial in and of itself. But you do something to get, ahead in this world, there has to be something that's not going to be all, sunshine and roses. There has to be some sort of drawback. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the story gets bland.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But was that a surprise when that happened to Yerin, to you? Or surprise,
like, oh my gosh, what is this going on? No.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
Was that unexpected? Yes.
Shock and awe.
So it was, there was no awe. There was no shock, but it was unexpected. I'll say that. Yeah.
So mild surprise.
Mild surprise, yeah.
Maybe unexpected is mild surprise.
Sure.
Shock is massive surprise.
Yes, it was not massive. It was not a Dragot level surprise.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more surprises where that came from, Bucko.
Ooh, do tell.
Well, I told you last time that there's going to be a little romance, a little fling.
Yes, you did. Between Lindon and somebody else, or
no, he's already got his gal.
Yeah. So the sister, the guy who cut off his arms, his sister and somebody, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Wei Shi Kelsa and Jai Long.
Right. Yes. Okay. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Do you think that ends up curbing Jai Long's distrust and malice?
Maybe softening it a little bit?
Towards Lindon?
Maybe soften it a little bit? Or maybe not? It's just like, now I have this family member who is a piece of crap and I have to deal with it because I like this girl. I just don't know.
Yeah. You think Mercy finds anybody in the story?
I hope so. Mercy's a nice girl. She deserves love.
She does deserve love. Because her mother never gave it to her. Sorry. Couldn't even say that without laughing. Oh, man. So you had texted me, and I don't really understand what you texted me about the questions of agency. Did you have notes on that in some way?
Oh, yeah. Like it was just a random side quest I wanted to go on if it's appropriate. So they used their will and authority, this group of our friends that we followed, to forcefully evacuate the Sacred Valley douches, as I've named them.
Yeah.
So again, just to play devil's advocate, is that moral and right? Like, because they have not given them the agency. We talked about mercy saying, hey, those who want to go, let's go. Those who want to stay, you made your bed, sleep in it.
Yeah.
Here, they're like, we're here to save you because we love you. And I have some sentimentality.
Well, we don't love them.
Right. But you know what I'm getting at.
We're here to save you because
I'm being
Lindon,
silly. Sure.
I'm good guy Lindon.
I'm being freaking silly. But the point is, we're here. Dread gods are coming. We want to save you. No, don't save us. Screw you, bastard. They're like, nope, we're saving you. And then they forcefully save somebody. Mm-hmm. To the question about morality and what's right, I want to throw that back in your face. What do you think of that?
Okay.
Well, that's not what I meant, but you can take it any way you want.
Throw it back in your... All right. So the question... This question of agency, and let me try and specify it to make sure that I and the audience are following it correctly, or give you the chance to refine your question. Is it morally right that Lindon and crew come in and forcefully remove people who would be happier dying in their hometown?
Yep.
Instead of, like, is the forced will on another, is the forced agency on another for their own good morally right? Is that the question?
Yeah, I would qualify
in
it.
Or out of world?
In world.
Qualify away.
Sure. Give me both. Out of world and in world. But I'm going to qualify yours not for their own good, to save them. Because for their own good could be anything. Like, they're not going to be better people if they're saved. Yes, they're dead if they stay. They're not going to improve as people if they're removed. They're just not dead. So to save a life, to be very specific, to save a life of these people, whatever they are, whoever they are.
So it's the trolley car problem. Is it better to pull the lever and kill one person and save 3 lives, or is it better to let the trolley run over 3 lives and save the one person?
No, it's if we're going to apply the trolley car analogy, is you get a chance to save all 4, and 2 of them are like, nope, not going anywhere. I like trains. Because that's the equivalent of their freaking,
Yeah.
emotional IQ.
Yeah. I'd say in-world absolutely makes sense. Totally fine. If someone wants to use their absolute power to not do good, wants to use their absolute power to flex on saving lives, so be it.
Yeah.
Allowed. Meta-wise, in today's world, I want to say yes. However, the culture that we have created, and I say we, including me, even though I disagree with it, because the culture is the culmination of everyone's actions. So we're all responsible, whether you like it or not. It's not my culture. If you have to deal with it,
here.
it is your culture. So Suck it up, Buttercup. It sucks to suck for both of us. Yeah, I think that's just the nature of goodness. Is you have to make the difficult decision, even in the midst of being against the masses, even against the agency and will of others. Which then, I mean, you could extrapolate this and be like, well, then is it okay to, that hypothetical question, like, well, then should we go back and kill Hitler, right? Like, I mean, maybe that'll get brought up next. This is like extrapolation to the max, right?
Let me tighten up this conversation. So, in real world, there's a tsunami coming, right? Everybody knows it's coming.
Sure, yeah. Giving a better analogy.
You go to that coastal town and you say, hey, there's an analogy coming.
There's an analogy coming.
Everybody runs for the hills. There's a tsunami coming, and you happen to know these people. You grew up in this town, so let's make it a little bit more aligned with the story. You happen to know these people, and they're like, chubby Jonathan, shut up. Nobody wants to hear whatever you have to say. Because that's what people used to call you. I'm not making fun of you. Audience, I'm making fun of my buddy here.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but what the hell? I need to save you. There's a tsunami coming. And because you have real-world powers, let's say you're some sort of government official, and you tell your soldiers to tranquilize everybody, shoot tranquilizer darts, and we're going to just put them in boats or put them in cars and drive inland. Is that morally good? to get really in the weeds here.
Yeah. What is that phrase? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it is.
I've certainly done things that I was like, oh man, I'm trying to help someone else, that ended up biting me because humans are big meat bags of emotion.
Of assholes.
And if you wanna at me in the comments, like, let's just sit down for an hour and talk about your past, because there are times where you've been a big meat bag of emotions.
Yeah.
Look, those of us who prefer to try to be reasonable or logic driven, you're still look. I've got friends who you might think are like on the spectrum, or like have Asperger's or whatever, because of like how logical they act. But I can tell you for a fact, from the breadth and time that I've known them, they're still absolutely fueled by their emotions, even though they themselves don't recognize it.
Oh yeah.
So
man is an emotional animal, just like he's a political animal. You can't escape it.
Meat Bags 101. It's a sub-course I'm doing.
So, I'll give you my half answer.
It should be like we said earlier, where Malice has to give them the opportunity to be like morally just. You need to give people the opportunity to save themselves. If you can't, won't. If you don't, that's on you. If you do, you tried. If you try and they say no, in Lindon's case, but you only had you were limited on time. The tsunami's coming in 2 hours. You've got an hour before you have to flee.
Yeah.
So you definitely can't grab everybody. Who do you save? Wife and kids? Women and children? You line people up. Who's a good swimmer? Sorry.
Hand out lifeboats.
Hey,
hope you make it.
Lifeboats are on dock A. Be sure to use this key. Whoop.
Whoops.
Sorry.
So here's my half answer, but it's kind of a full answer too. I'm just not going to go into detail because I don't want to derail and belabor.
Welcome to Side Quest. Derailing is like the new name of the side quest.
Fair enough. So you do what we said Malice should do, and you do what happens today. Like, there's a warning that goes out to Floridians, as an example. It says, hey, hurricane coming. We're evacuating the city. People evacuate, others stay. The ones that stay, some die. Some get stuck on a roof. We still save those bastards. So, but we're not in Cradle. And I'll leave my answer at that.
If you're Malice, you will let the tsunami come, and then those who are on roofs, you will use your bow and arrow to shoot from afar.
That works too. Like, whatever.
Oh, the
where
tsunami
it goes, man.
Got him.
Yeah. Why is he impaled in the roof? I don't know. I'm thinking the tsunami got him. Must have been a spear in the wave.
Must have been a sharp object rolling through the tsunami.
Why is Madra coming out of the hole? I don't know.
Yeah, why is it Black Shadow Madra coming? Must have been a Black Shadow spear that was just hanging out in the waves.
Yep.
Who knew?
It was a black tsunami.
Okay, we don't need to make
I didn't mean it that way. You don't have to make it into something I didn't say. We're not that freaking spicy here. Goodness gracious.
Okay, I'm off my rocker at this point. Do you have any final thoughts before we wind down?
No, except that I'll reiterate, and I want to know other people's opinions. So if you guys are reading this with us, or you read it all once, twice, 10 times,
yeah, bring on the experts.
Is this your favorite book? Or which book is your favorite?
In the Cradle series.
Obviously. But
not obviously.
Pretty obviously. Well, okay. Do you like this book? Do you hate this book? Is it your favorite in the Cradle series? I want some comments back and forth. I want to hear what other people say.
Now you know how I feel. When
our guests are on?
Well, I do this to you
Sorry,
too. Sorry,
guests. Yeah.
Where I'll be like, blah, 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 blah.
Because I think you have more to say.
Crickets.
And then it's like, oh, okay, it's my turn.
Do you guys ever deal with this where someone says something and you're like, I'm just going to let the silence hang? Not for any particular reason. Sometimes I have a reason. Just me, huh? Cool.
What did you say?
Now you sound like my brothers. Were you talking?
What?
Middle child life.
Goodness. All right, folks. It's been real. We love you. Subscribe, share, ring bells, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a side quest.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Is it? Is it what you just said?
So, 2 calls to action.
I need to mute him quicker next time. I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, and we'll listen to your feedback and read authors that you suggest. And of course, we'll take side quests along the way. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.